So we now move forward to PlasmaXchange. I'm going to give a brief tutorial for what PlasmaXchange is for people who are not very familiar with it, but in essence, PlasmaXchange is an oil change for humans. What we're doing is taking out your blood and we mix it with a little citrate to keep the blood thinner. It's a very mild anticoagulant. It binds up calcium, and without calcium, the coag factors cannot work. And then we centrifuge it, and we separate the cells from the plasma. You can see the plasma being gathered in the upper right-hand corner there, and as it's being gathered, then it'll be flushed down to a waste receptacle down on the side, because you're going to fill that unit there about 3 times, maybe a little bit more, through one process. Because what this does is it basically takes out 72% of your plasma in one plasma exchange. That means one session. And in return, we put it back, we put all the cells back in with albumin and saline. It acts as a space holder, both osmotically and nutrient or electrolyte as, to you generate new plasma yourself within about 24 to 36 hours. So what we basically did is took out all the old, toxic, inflamed, oxidized plasma, and we let you build in new, fresh, non-oxidized, non-inflamed, non-toxic plasma. And then we wait about a month, and we repeat it again and again and again. So if we're doing 72, and I'm a mathematician, so I understand the fallacy of what I'm going to say, but it's essentially the first time we're doing 72% of your plasma. By the time we do a second plasma exchange, we've done about 91% of your plasma. The third is 96, the fourth is 99, the fifth is almost 100%. That's why when you start hearing about plasma exchange, you're going to hear about the series of 5, because that's how many you need to reach about a complete exchange of a human's plasma. It's used in over 167 diseases. And what we know about the plasma, the reason we give back albumin, because a lot of people are out there saying, let's use plasma. That's the young blood theory that we talked about, or that we've heard about. And people are like, hey, we'll take all these young guys' plasma, and we're going to give it to all these older guys in the exchange. So we'll take out their plasma and give them young plasma, because not only is it less toxic, but it has all these growth hormones associated with it. I'm an old trauma doc. For 10 years, I would have trauma patients come in, and as I'm putting up the 10th unit of plasma, I'm wondering what's going to kill them, the trauma or the plasma. Because there are a lot of side effects associated with giving somebody multiple different persons' plasma, because you're never going to get all the antibodies under control, no matter how well you test, because there's just some we don't know how to test for at this point. But when you use albumin, you have a very low incidence of side effects. You have some people, they get a little bit of a rash. They can get a little bit hypotensive because we're exchanging fluids, but it's a one-to-one transfer. But sometimes after you've taken all that inflammation out and all those toxins out, the vascular system goes, and it relaxes. And so we have a transient drop in their blood pressure. We give them a little saline. They get better. They get a little itching because the citrate and the low calcium, they scratch their nose, they scratch their cheek, they scratch their fingers. But all these things can be averted and treated even before you start the program by just making sure they eat a really good breakfast so they don't get hypoglycemic. Again, we're taking 70% plasma. That means we're taking out the blood sugar. And then we give them Tums, which is calcium, to eat beforehand to neutralize the effects of the citrate. And then we give them fluids, and we make sure that they eat or drink something during the procedure. So we're always keeping fluids and electrolytes and sugar going back in. And it's incredibly safe. This has been used in over 50 years on patients. But when we start using plasma, that goes up to 27% side effects. And they're not good side effects. We're talking about not just a rash, we're talking about anaphylaxis. And the worst case scenario, and this happens in 1 in 1,000 cases of plasma exchange, with plasma, you're going to end up with transfusion-related acute injury to the lung, TRAIL. And this person will fill up their lungs while they're there in your office, and then you'll have to intubate them, and you may get them into the ICU fast enough to avoid them dying, because it's basically rapid onset ARDS. So all these people are like, we're doing this plasma transfusion on people. I'm saying in longevity medicine, our purpose is to help people live longer, not kill them. It sounds basic, but that's the truth. And there have been people that the FDA has tried because they used plasma and they came out with bad side effects, including a death. PlasmaXchange has been around for 50 years. I used to use it in the emergency room. I remember an overdose on a 16-year-old who wanted to commit suicide, went into grandma's room, took all of her digitalis, and swallowed it. She came in with a heart rate of 4. As long as she laid down, she was fine. She was 16, but 4 beats per minute. We hooked her up to the PlasmaXchange. Digitalis is all protein bound. We pulled it out. 2 hours later, she was able to go home doing fine. So this has been around a long time. It has over 167 known diseases it's been used for, mostly in the autoimmune space. Guillain-Barré is quite popular that this is, but even in that, TPE isn't the first-line therapy. It's a third-line and a fourth-line therapy, which is why it's not something that's always on our radar. But it's been around forever, and the companies that make the machine now manages everything. So if you just listen to the machine and don't override its logic with yours, you're going to be fine. We've done hundreds of plasma exchanges in our office in the last year. I mean, I stopped counting because as many we've done, and we've never had a significant problem. We've had people get low hypovolemic, we had people get low hypoglycemic, we've had people get the itching, we had one patient get the rash. It's not anaphylactic, it's just this really itchy rash that you can treat with calcium and steroids. But it's a very safe procedure. This all started because of the studies that were done in 2005 by the Conboys, who are Stanford PhDs, who took an old, fat, arthritic mouse, a human equivalent age of 70, and a young, lean, brown mouse, human equivalent age about 20, and they tied the circulatory system together, and 6 weeks later, the old mouse got substantially younger. Everybody, this was published, this type of test had been done for a very long time, but not towards aging. Everybody repeated this worldwide. This had to be done 10,000 times in the next 7 years. Bezos invested in a pharmacy and spent a lot of money to try to find out the magic particle that the young mouse was giving the old mouse that made the old mouse younger. Peter Thiel from PayPal invested in an AI program to try to figure out that way what the particle was, and everybody came up empty 7 years later, until 2012 when somebody came up to a podium and knocked on the mic one day and said, "You're looking at the wrong mouse." It wasn't that what was in the young mouse that made the old mouse younger, it was what's in the old mouse that was making the old mouse older. And that everybody went, oh, if that's the case, we should be able to do a plasma exchange on the mouse. And in fact, that worked incredibly well. So everybody realized that now we're not dealing with a product in the plasma that's really making the old mouse younger. It's getting the toxins out. But what they felt at that time, and this is a study by Dobry Kiprov and the Cowboys, the one I'm talking about, that was published. This is the paper I saw that when I realized after I retired, I needed to come back because I wanted to make this better. Because what they realized is when they did this with 6 people who were over 60, had 2 control people that were in their 30s, measured 500 protein biomarkers, picked 75 of them, and they saw these biomarkers all markedly improve after they did the plasma exchange on these people. And this is a paper that they published, that old plasma dilution, which means TPE, reversed the biomarkers of aging. The immune system got better, the inflammation went down, oxidation went down, and their conclusion was this was because they had eliminated the age-related metabolic excess, which basically means as we get older, we produce more crap in our biology, and that's what making people older. But when I read this, I realized what they did was they removed the environmental toxins. They had figured out a solution that nobody had ever figured out before of how to get these things out. And that's why I got excited. I came back, I started working with my friends, and we put together this protocol. In addition to the plasma exchange, we have lifestyle changes that we start informing the patient of on the very first plasma exchange. We do it again on the 5th plasma exchange to reinforce with them, these are the things you need to do now that we're getting you clean so you can eliminate putting things in. We started adding supplements that we knew would help eliminate these toxins, reverse inflammation and oxidation. We started doing both oral therapy of medications and supplements, and we used everything that we knew from integrative medicine that you would need to do to make this even more powerful. And in fact, the results have been astounding. These are just some of the papers we used to formulate our protocol, as it has to do with everything the body needs to get it started again on the path of health. So if you really want to think about it, you ever walk into an old barn and find a Nova? That's what this is. 50 years it's been in the garage. 50 years it's been covered in dirt. Plants are growing up inside it. There's no air in the tires. There's no oil in the crank. There's no gas in the tank. There's no spark in the plug. What we've done with PlasmaXchange is remove all the dirt and all the weeds. What we've done with the rest of the protocol is put air in the tires, gas in the tank, oil in the crank, sparks in the plug. And so what we did on the protocol as a timeline for you, so you understand, this is a 6-month process that we ran these people through. We started out by doing 2 sets of labs. And in these labs, we measured 200 biomarkers on each patient, and then we repeated those a week later. So we would use everybody's biomarkers as their own control. We would then have the patient come in and do their lifestyle recommendation. This is the videotape that we have them watch. And then we would start the process of the PlasmaXchange. You get a PlasmaXchange, you go home with our nutrients, and you do it per our protocol. You come back every 28 days, we do it again, and you do this for a total series of 5. And then afterwards, 2 weeks later, we did another set of labs. As Dr. Anderson would say, this is when the toxins would equilibrate. This is when we'd see a result. And I believe him completely. But I said, you know what? How long do they stay stable? Do they start reversing? So added to that, we started to do labs at 6 weeks as well. So we had 2 sets afterwards, one at 2 weeks and one at 6 weeks. And I'm going to get ready to show you the numbers that we had. And these are awesome.